There were 7 guys on the depth chart when I got there. Scott Dreisbach, who was the year ahead of me. Brian Greasy, who was the year ahead of that. Jason Carr was going into his 5th year. Scott Loeffler was this highly recruited quarterback out of Ohio. I remember being out there the first day of practice and being like, man, I'm better than these guys. Now, of course, I wasn't, but just that was always my attitude.
Come on, Brady and Greasy, hurry up!
By his sophomore season, Brady was pushing number 14, senior Brian Greasy, for the starting job.
Greasy and Tommy they were tied. I mean, they were neck and neck. No one knew who was going to start. And Coach Carr's thing was always the tie goes to the upperclassmen. I remember Tommy being a little, mad about that and thought about transferring and thought about going back home to Cal or something like that.
He came back the next day. He sat down right in front of my desk. He said, Coach, I'm not going to leave, and I'm going to prove to you that I'm the best quarterback. There's no question, as I looked into his eyes, he had a goal in mind, and he was not going to be denied.
In his junior year, Brady started every game and won 10 of his final 11. But to remain the starter his senior season, he would have to fend off sophomore Drew Henson. Before even coming to Michigan, Henson was a state hero, a two-sport phenom for a high school 20 miles outside of Ann Arbor.
He probably was the most highly touted athlete to come to Michigan, at least in my memory.
You know, he has incredible talents. I mean, faster than I was, stronger, quicker, more elusive, better arm.
This guy has, they say, can't miss written all over. Lloyd Carr said, I've never been around a guy that has this much potential.
At the start of Brady's senior season, the tight quarterback battle did not automatically go to the upperclassmen.
Who's our starting quarterback? What time's the game? 3:30? You'll see then.
Coach Carr said, all right, Tom, you're going to start the games. Drew's going to play the second quarter games, and then we're going to decide, who plays after that. He thought he had 2 good quarterbacks, wanted to play them both, and he said he was going to go with the hot hand.
We had a chance to talk to some NFL personnel, and this one director of player personnel said he understood why Michigan is continuing to try to get Henson more and more opportunities to go out there and get experience because his upside is so much higher than Tom Brady's. And I said, yeah, but Brady's the guy with the experience. He's the captain. 10 wins last year. He said, yeah, but if he doesn't play Henson, he's got a problem because then Henson's going to go and he's going to go play baseball.
Tommy was the clear cut. He was the captain of that team. He was the leader of the team, and he was the best quarterback on that team, bar none. Ask any guy on that team.
With Carr juggling the quarterbacks, Michigan won its first 5 games. But against Michigan State, the Wolverines got in a 17-point hole with Henson. And Brady was asked to dig them out of it.
Pump fake going to the corner. Terrell is open. Touchdown, Michigan.
Brady threw for 241 yards in the final 18 minutes and nearly brought Michigan back. After a 307-yard performance the following week, the quarterback competition was over.
Brady really separated himself the way he played. And that's when I decided Brady was going to be the quarterback and Drew was going to be the backup.
When the fall colors blossom, optimism surrounds college football. At Penn State, September and October seemed like ice cream and cookies.
He's going long to Duffy Field. And he makes the catch at the 50. He's at the 45, the 40, the 35, the 30. He's going all the way down the sideline. Penn State touchdown, no flag, no flag, no flag.
Bleak November was much crueler.
He'll throw it deep for Johnson. It's caught at the 12.
Penn State's tears washed away 3 months of joy. Michigan understood Penn State's pain. No team is immune to the shocking upset these days.
We're going to make it. 25-30, 25-20, 15, 10, 5, 5.
Time to regroup. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brent Musburger. You know, it was just about this exact spot on the field a week ago where Minnesota broke Penn State's heart. And now the question here this afternoon against Michigan is, can the Penn State players and, yes, the coaches recover emotionally? Remember 3 weeks ago, Michigan lost a very similar game at home against Illinois. The next week out, they struggled against Indiana before blowing Northwestern away last week. The stakes here today are huge. Neither of these teams can reach the BCS championship game in all likelihood, but both are eligible for the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, and the Orange Bowl. The loser, though, would seem to be out. So the stakes have never been bigger between Penn State and Michigan.
Michigan's David Terrell is one of the nation's best. Like his teammate Anthony Thomas, the A-Train. Penn State counters with Courtney Brown and a linebacker named LeVar Arrington, a Superman in cleats. The stars are out. It's Michigan and Penn State.
You are looking live at Beaver Stadium on a beautiful November Saturday. It's a Big Ten showdown between Michigan and Penn State. Two schools chasing big prizes.
Flutie flushed. Throws it down. Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown.
It's up. Gets it to the right. Lets it go. He's got three people down there. The ball's up in the air. Caught. Touchdown.
Welcome, everybody, to the College Football Retro Show. I'm your host, Dan Murphy, alongside my co-host, Brian Barnes. And Brian, we're going back to 1999. It's Michigan versus Penn State. Quite a long cold open there, probably our longest cold open, but I thought I did a good job of telling the story and setting us up here.
Well, the significance of the game, you really highlighted, before we got on, and just talking about it, kind of felt like the Tom Brady moment at Michigan. Now, I still don't think people thought he was going to become what he became in the NFL, but it was still, remember that season, and since Drew Henson got on campus, he was fighting that battle back and forth with him, and then about halfway through the year, I think it was after their Illinois loss, he became the full-time starter, and they weren't, rotating quarters. He just took over, and this was a game that's for him and for Michigan, but in particular him, right? He didn't play very well early on, and then had a great fourth quarter to secure the victory. It was a pretty fun one to watch, and I remember watching it when I was younger. And again, I don't think we thought he was going to become, because this game and then the bowl game that they had that I'm sure we'll talk about, like those were things like, oh, okay, like this guy can play at a high level with a lot of poise, but I still don't think anybody thought he was going to be what he became.
And he would have a great drive against Ohio State in that game to win that game. But Ohio State, this was a really down year for them, which we'll look at in a minute. But I really felt this game was kind of the Tom Brady game. When you think about Tom Brady at Michigan, people might point to the Alabama game, the bowl game that they won. But I think this is the game where you're at Penn State. Season is kind of, I don't want to say it's been crumbling, but it's a 2-loss season, and you want to try to salvage it, get to a big bowl game. You needed to win this game and to go into Penn State, and one of the toughest, if not the toughest defenses in the country. They would have the number 1 and 2 picks in the draft come from their defense that year with Arrington and Brown. And for Brady to do what he did late in that game, down 10 and two game-winning drives there, this really was a Tom Brady game, I think.
Well, you think about it, Penn State that year, they were ranked as high as 2 most of the season, and then the week before, they got upset, kind of a fluky game against Minnesota and lost by a point. You saw in the highlights a late Hail Mary to get Minnesota in field goal position to win the game. And so you knew Minnesota at that point, they weren't out of any race yet for anything, and so you knew they were going to be ready to play, and they played really well for 3.5 quarters, and then like you said, Tom Brady kind of happened and made his mark on the Michigan football program.
Well, Brian, let's go ahead and kind of break down the coaching staffs and the rosters for both teams. You want to start with Michigan here?
Yeah, we can do that, Dan. It was your typical like Michigan, your coaching staff names you've heard of. Lloyd Carr was the head coach. Mike DeBoer is the offensive coordinator, who later became the head coach at Central Michigan University. Brady Hoke was on that staff. Terrell Austin, remember, he was a defensive coordinator for the Lions at one point. He was on that staff. And then Terry Malone, who later became their offensive coordinator. Kind of a neat story there for me. He as a high school coach, occasionally college coaches will come in and ask about your players, and it was pretty cool. I got a phone call from our main office that said, "Hey, Terry Malone's here to see you." And if you would have told me when I was 21 years old watching this or whatever that would happen, I'd say that's a pretty awesome thing. So, but yeah, this team, like Dan, this was a weird season in the Big Ten. The conference champion was Wisconsin, who lost to Michigan. And Wisconsin fans, I remember, and they'll tell you now, that was before they inserted Brooks Bollinger at quarterback, and he was a freshman, and then they ran the table. But they not only did Wisconsin lose to Michigan at home that year, the week before they lost to Cincinnati, and they still ended up winning the Big Ten. They had Ron Dane, who obviously had an incredible season, Heisman Trophy season, and they were still pretty good. But it's just a weird year, and so
you can see the Big Ten standings here, Brian, and what it reminds me of is kind of what you've seen from the SEC these last couple of years recently, where you have maybe not the dominant teams at the top, but man, there a ton of balance from top to bottom.
Well, I mean, you're on the screen. We have 4 10-win teams, right? Like that to me has always been a marker. I mean, nowadays, granted, the schedule is a lot longer, but if you have a 10-win season, like you're borderline, you're an elite football team. There was 4 that year in the Big Ten.
7 top 25 teams there.
Right?
And Ohio State's not in there.
Which is kind of crazy. But so in Michigan, looking at their schedule, like this was the year they lost to Michigan State and at Michigan State, and that was Nick Saban's best team, and 34-31. And remember, Drew Henson didn't play well, and Tom Brady played most of the second half and almost led them to a comeback. Okay, so they lost that game. Then they lost the following week, which we saw in the cold open. They got upset by Illinois by 6, right? And I think they blew a 20-point lead that game. And so Michigan's arguably, right, 9 points away from an undefeated season. And people argue too, well, if you would have just started Tom Brady and played him the entire time, you might have had an undefeated season. Well, so kind of a weird year. Some of the players and the names on that Michigan roster, like a lot we know already. Obviously, Tom Brady, Drew Henson, Anthony Thomas was their workhorse running back. We saw Aaron Shea. He became, I think he's Tom Brady's best friend and played some tight end in the NFL. David Terrell and Marcus Knight were their best receivers. Defensively, Ian Gold, Belleville High School. I think he's my age. He was a dude. Larry Foote. So your typical Michigan team. Dhani Jones, like a lot of guys that maybe didn't become superstars in the NFL, Dan. But again, for big time college football, Division I college football, they were pretty
quite
good.
A few holdovers from the 97 national championship team too. Ian Gold was a big part of that team. Dhani Jones. So a lot of senior championship leadership on that defense.
And I remember the one big thing here, James Whitley was a corner. He was a guy who had the unenviable task of replacing Charles Woodson. And I just remember people, like the poor kid, like I felt bad for him. Like he was a pretty good football player. You're a starter in the Big Ten, but you're being compared to Charles Woodson. And so I know that game against Michigan State, he in particular got torched by like Plaxico Burress, and that was a rough game. But like, I felt bad for him, but that was a loss. But it was still, obviously a really good defense.
I want to go back to the Michigan's offense real quick, and that offensive line. Hutchinson and Backus on the line together. 2 guys who long NFL careers. I mean, Jeff Backus with the Lions, longtime left tackle. Hutchinson will go on to Seattle to have just an incredible career there. So 2 absolute studs across Michigan's offensive line there. And obviously, I remember the Lions. I mean, I remember as a Lions fan, we were hoping to get Hutchinson, and then Hutchinson, I believe it was the pick before the Lions went to Seattle, and then the Lions settled with Backus.
It kind of felt like during that era, right? Because I think it might have been the year before where the Lions took Aaron Gibson when they could have had John Jansen, right? And there's obviously some local ties, personal ties, like we know the family. I went to high school guy. I'm like, God, that would have been awesome. And I remember Bobby Ross's logic on the radio when he said it was just Aaron Gibson's overall run blocking ability, which is what put him ahead of John. And it's kind of like, well, Aaron Gibson really didn't, he was always hurt, it felt like, right? You know what I'm saying? And just
out of shape and
all that stuff. And it's just like, oh, it would have been super cool. Kind of, very similar to here, Jeff Backus and Hutchinson.
Yeah, but Backus, unlike Aaron Gibson, Jeff Backus ended up having a pretty solid career. I know
for sure.
Some fans got frustrated because, there are times that he got beat, but I think overall, he had a pretty solid career here.
No doubt. Yep, no doubt. And then, Dan, Penn State that year, it's crazy as it is, they're like you talked about, Courtney Brown and LeVar Arrington, and there was the debate, like who would go number one, and their defense, like obviously was stacked. Like those two guys were extreme difference makers. Courtney Brown, a defensive end, and LeVar Arrington was more that rush outside linebacker type. But their offense, I don't think was as good as some of the previous or some other of the Penn State teams, that before with Kajana Carter and Kerry Collins and those guys. Like their starting quarterback, Kevin Thompson, Larry Johnson was in their backfield, but he ended up having a really good career in the NFL with the Chiefs, but like he wasn't the horse that year as the running back. So it was Eddie Drummond who ended up playing for the Lions as a receiver. But again, though, where they made their name that year was with their defense. And you talked about that. Courtney Brown, LeVar Arrington, Brandon Short was an awesome middle linebacker. Brian Scott was a defensive back who had a good career in the NFL as well. So it was obviously Joe Paterno was the coach then. Jerry Sandusky was the defensive coordinator. And, the guy, remember we talked about when we did the retro show, Michigan State, Penn State a few years before, Fran Gantner, who I was like, I wanted him to be the head coach at Michigan State. He was still their offensive coordinator at the time. So still, they were a team that, you win this game and, they're one loss team. And then back then, with the BCS, I might not have got them into the BCS, but I'm not sure. They did not play Penn State that year, they did not play Wisconsin that year, I believe. So I don't know how that tiebreaker would have worked out, but there's a chance if they win this game, they're still in the Rose Bowl.
Or at least, maybe get Michigan's spot, in the Orange Bowl,
right.
Alabama.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. For sure. So all in all, it leads up to it's a really intriguing late season matchup. And, you and I talk and, we've ad nauseum about, college football back then. It was still a big deal. Whether these teams were going to be in the playoff or not, right. It was just still a big game and a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So pull this off the screen here and we can go ahead and get into it, Brian. We can get into this deep dive here. So it is a late season game. Obviously, both teams had, as we've mentioned, had some big upsets happen to them. But it's still, as we heard in the cold open, Musburger, address it. Like there's still a lot on the line. And it's funny, Brian, because it's like, okay, they don't have a chance at the national championship, but it still feels like a big deal. Mm-hmm. Like even though they're playing to try to get into BCS games that aren't for the championship, they're considered big games. They're considered to matter, a lot, where it just doesn't, obviously with the playoff system, but even before we got into this expanded playoffs, when it was just a 4-team or even just a 2-team, I think for a long time, it just didn't, it gradually, as we had a true national championship game and a playoff, these games just kind of gradually lost their importance.
Which is a bummer because we enjoyed it and college football was great and it was unique because of that. The argument was always they had the best regular season in all sports, and you could argue the importance of all those games. And as cool as the playoff was and watching Miami do what they did and get to the national title game, right? I mean, that can be cool as well, but this was really cool back then, and I do miss this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into it. It's November of 1999. It is the Michigan Wolverines at Penn State at Beaver Stadium.
3 down linemen and motion.
We're going to start off Michigan. Penn State has the ball first here.
Michigan recovers.
They immediately fumble.
The Wolverines near the red zone with Ian Gold pouncing on the loose football. The change to Cole as the center. Backfires on Joe
the volume down here a little bit, so it's not blasting at us. But Michigan was unable to get really anything going after that turnover. Settles for a field goal. But right off the bat, jumps up 3-0.
Michigan ahead with a field goal. And Crenshaw being pressed in a wide receiver.
Penn State's following drive gets a good run here. And bam! Another fumble. Penn State starts out their first 2 possessions with back-to-back fumbles.
Penn State had the ball and fumbled it away again. And now Michigan has recovered 2 quick turnovers on the Nittany line.
Probably not how you scripted it up if you're Fran Gantner in the OC.
Absolutely not. And here we get Drew Henson comes into the game. We get a throwback pass to him. So even though Brady's been announced, he's the starter, Lloyd Carr can't help himself. He has to find a way to get Henson involved here.
Well, like Tom Brady mentioned, like Drew Henson is a better athlete than he is. Yeah. He does some things that Tom Brady couldn't do.
It's a beautiful block down at the 3-yard line. Terrell, here's the pitch now to Thomas. Cut back, cuts end zone, touchdown, Michigan.
Great train. Michigan right at the jump, man. Goes up 10-0 in Happy Valley.
So they're responding really well after those couple losses. The following few weeks responded well.
So we had an exchange of punts for quite a bit, and then Penn State gets this big punt return here, get themselves back in the game.
It's a third of the game, special teams.
Macklin's got Terrell left side. Brady rolling in that. Arrington's picked off, fires back, picked off. Fox is got.
Fast forward a little bit here. This was their ensuing drive. Michigan got a pretty good drive going, but Brady throws the pick. And again, we just exchanged punts to the end of the half. We jump out of halftime here, and Michigan gets the ball first.
Snaps his second reception. First down. And down. Arrington trying to get in. Brady gets time. Got a wide open David Terrell.
David Terrell is a pretty special college receiver.
He was the number 1 pick of the Bears, first round.
Marcus Knight would be huge in this game. It's a touchdown there.
Here's their attack, and boy, do they punt it away. They get it away.
I want to pause it there real quick. So Michigan was up 17-7. Penn State would get a decent drive. They'd have to punt, but they'd pin Michigan deep there. And this is kind of one of those crucial plays, Brian, where you get kind of like hidden yardage, and Michigan's unable to really kind of get out of their shadow of their own end zone. They have to punt. They get some pressure. It's a short shanked punt, and Penn State gets the ball here around the 28-yard line. Penn State wouldn't really be able to do anything offensively, but they basically get a free 3 points here with the field goal to cut it to a 1-score game.
So with that, Dan, one of the more eye-opening moments I had at a clinic is I was listening to Urban Meyer, and this is well before he was at Florida, right? So there was no Michigan, Ohio State, anything like that. But he's a spread guru, and everybody's listening to him, and you're thinking he's going to talk about the spread and how they're getting the ball to athletes all over the field and using motions and unique sets and things like that. And all he talked about was the importance of field position, and even with him, right? And he talked about how the goal of their offense wasn't necessarily to score every time, but like everybody has seen those drive charts, those field position charts, right? And if you start, like you said, if your starting field position is like inside your 20, your chances of scoring are like 8%, right? And so his goal, he's always said, is his offense, they wanted to get at least 2 first downs to be able to punt the ball. And that way you limit those opportunities for your offenses and then set your offense up for success. So it was really eye-opening how important that field position was, even from that level and from that guy and as an offensive guru.
Well, this is one of those great examples because Michigan's drive obviously ends in a punt, but sometimes the drives that end in a punt aren't always the same. Like you mentioned, if you get if Michigan gets 2 first downs there and then punts, Penn State doesn't get these free 3 points because Penn State goes 3 and out, but because of the field position, they're able to get 3 points there. And the special teams have saved Penn State here early in this game, getting the punt return for a touchdown, and then the punt that pins Michigan deep. You get a shank punt, you get another 3 points here without really your offense really doing a whole bunch. You're only down 7 here, 17-10.
Back to within 7. Still in the game.
Fast forward here a little bit here.
First down, Penn State. Henson, and he's got Fields again for the first down to the Michigan 37-yard line. Penn State staying in the air.
Go for a bomb. We got Eddie Drummond to tie the game.
Look at throw. You hear the name Whitley.
Yeah.
Not Charles Woodson.
Picked up in the garbage. Breaks free. 40, 45. Across midfield to the 49-yard line. Was it left defensive end?
4 quarters here. Getting into the 4th quarter now. Then gets drilled.
You know, that play happens today. That's 15 yards and Michigan first down.
Pretty funny there. It didn't quite catch it, but Danielson, because it's Arrington who crushes Brady. And he's like, Brady gets a idea of what the NFL is going to feel like. Little, like you said, no idea what Brady would become or the incredible long career you have in the NFL. It's kind of a little funny moment there.
Waits for someone to break free. Comes back, backfield. Terrell makes the stop, but it's first down.
Interesting here, Brian. David Terrell, I forgot about this. He was playing both ways.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of defense. Gets a break up here.
He did.
Forces a field goal.
Michigan's offense has been kind of stagnant now.
Yeah, after the initial, kind of going up 10-0, they really kind of got pretty stagnant down the stretch here throughout the game. Allowed Penn State to get back in it.
Intercepted by Jew. 40-on-9, 35.
This obviously a crucial play here. Brady throws a pick 6. Penn State goes up 10, goes up 2 scores. It's looking pretty dire for Michigan here. They get a big 3rd down. Got to have it. Incomplete, but you get a late flag. So a crucial play here, Brian. Obviously, Michigan, has to have it. It would have been tough choice. I would imagine they probably would have punted because there's about 8 minutes left. But man, you're kind of conceding things if you punt there, I think. But they get the maybe not. But I mean, it's tough. You're literally it's tough. It's a tough choice either way. But it's gonna be tough if they don't get this pass interference flag.
No, for sure. I think they would have punted. That's still a lot of time left. And again, in college football, the clock stops after first downs, right? So it's not a full running clock. And yeah, I think knowing Lloyd Carr back then, he definitely would have punted. But yeah, big flag, and Penn State's probably kicking themselves because in their mind, if that doesn't happen, they're like, all right, we get a couple first downs, the game's over. So that's and again, like one play doesn't always determine the outcome of a game, in my opinion, but that was a close one.
Yeah, huge penalty for Michigan. Kind of saves the game for them in my opinion.
But it was thrown in the backfield, and the field judge now coming up to the referee.
I wonder if there's too many men on the field.
No, Brandon Short was probably pushing in the route.
Man front.
The A-train runs against the nickel, and that is something that usually is.
Like that play right there is a reminder that there's still a lot of time, Dan. Right, when you're down 10 in the 4th quarter, you're still running the football.
First down marker.
Still a lot of time.
First down and 10. Brady steps past Arrington. Forced to run.
It's the Brady scramble, which he did. I think people forget. Like earlier in his career, even in the NFL, he could scramble a little bit when he needed to.
Thomas out as a wide out. Brady got an open Terrell. Another first down. Clock
Great job stepping up in the pocket, getting into Terrell.
Split backs. Pump fake. Going to go down to the end zone. Incomplete. Macklin.
Another flag here.
Interference is going to be called on Macklin. Injury to David. Pump fake. Now got a man, Marquise Walker. First down and goal from the 2-yard line for the Wolverines, and now they're in territory. Shea stays in to block.
Nobody's got the tight end.
Brady, corner blitz, middle's open, reaches for the touchdown. Michigan.
Another scramble touchdown. Get it to a 1-score game, and that scramble, man, that reminded me of the game against the Raiders. His second year in the NFL when they won the first Super Bowl. a tuck rule game, but his scramble in the snow and diving into the snow for the touchdown, and then he spikes the ball and falls over into the snow. But it reminded me a lot of that. I had forgotten, like, he could scramble a little bit. Well, he was no, Michael Vick or anything, but when he needed to, he could make a play with his legs.
For sure. He could. And so there's about 3.5 minutes left. They're down, 3 now. And think about it as like if the game was today, like there would still be the 2-minute warning. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's still
the 2-minute timeout.
2-minute timeout, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah, sorry. But a lot of time.
But for Penn State, you're thinking, man, 1 or 2 first downs, we got it. 1 or 2 first downs, we got this game.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't. Their offense wasn't really consistent this entire game. Obviously,
no, they got a lot from special teams and defense. They got a defensive touchdown, special teams touchdown, and that free three that we talked about earlier.
Like we talked about, again, their defense had a lot of NFL dudes, including the top 2 picks in the NFL draft. Like you got to win. Like if you're them,
you think you can hold a 10-point. You won't get a first down.
Yeah,
we got to be able to hold a 10-point lead at home with this defense.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're going to see this series here. See the whole series break down. Start off with an incomplete pass. Yikes. Second down. Get stuffed for -3.
As Michigan's defense now puts them
you're going to have 3rd and long here.
3rd down and 13. Kevin Thompson, the senior quarterback. Under pressure, Gold was coming, launches one, Drummond.
Another deep pass for an incomplete pass. Brian, what are your thoughts here as a coach? When you're in this situation, Michigan's got timeouts. He got 3 minutes. So it's not, a true 4-minute offense situation because of the time and the timeout situation, but still to throw 2 deep incomplete passes in a 3-play series.
Because typically what happens is like there's a risk when you throw on first down, right? And I always felt this as a play caller, and we were comfortable throwing on first down, but if you don't complete the pass, you feel obligated to run the ball on 2nd and 10. Almost. Do you know what I'm saying? Especially if your quarterback, like we have here for Penn State, isn't an elite level guy, right? That you want the ball in his hands, right? So on 2nd down you're going to run the ball. Of course, the defense is going to know that too, right? So maybe looking back on it, I think if Penn State had to do it again instead of putting it in the arms of their quarterback Thompson, like maybe they call screen first down.
Yeah, I was going to say some safer pass plays.
Maybe move the pocket a little bit. I know that might not be his skill set, but like something like that, where at least it's a low risk play for him, or like run the ball 3 times and make him take 3 timeouts. Right? I mean, that would have been better than anything that happened in this series.
No, this is a disaster. I mean, really, when you think of what they were trying to do before the series started and what the series ended up, to have 2 incomplete passes, you stopped the clock twice for them. You only forced them to use 1 timeout, and then the total drive you had -3 yards.
I was just gonna say, two incompletions, and the one time you run the ball, you lose yards. Like, can't get worse than
just that. But it gets worse for them because special teams had been such a positive for them throughout this game. This punt would not be so much. Coverage team would not do so.
Johnson, low, returnable from the 41. Middle of the field, and the alley opens up for Johnson to the 35-yard line.
So now just like that, I mean, you go from having a 10-point lead. Michigan gets this long drive. You have 2 pass interference penalties that help them. But you get the touchdown from Michigan. They had to use quite a bit of time. You're under 4 minutes, but you get the ball back. You do, as we've mentioned, they do absolutely nothing offensively. -3 yards, throw 2 incomplete passes, only force 1 timeout. And then you have this terrible punt coverage. So just like that, Michigan has the ball 35 yards to go. They're almost already in field goal range to tie it.
Yeah, like that's why you play 4 quarters, and you know what I'm saying? It just kind of feels like Penn State's collapsing a little bit and falling apart. And as you know, I'm not a big momentum guy, but like, God, obviously if you're Michigan, you're like, they're not stopping us, right? But again, I go back to it, like you have elite defenders on the defense. You're Penn State. It's like, all right, fellas, go win us this thing.
Help them out a little bit.
Yeah, like let's get like it didn't even feel like there hasn't been a lot of times where in these last few drives where Brady was pressured. Like you didn't even feel that, and
except for the one Arrington got to him, but it was the pass interference.
The pass interference. You're right.
Of that drive.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
After that, not really.
Yeah.
And we always hear about it, complementary football between your 3 phases, and that absolutely fell apart for Penn State.
A 24-yard
So Michigan gets the ball here, 35-yard line. Chance to tie it, a chance to even go take the lead. Look at all that time.
First down for Michigan.
It says tight end there, but it's actually Marcus Knight who makes the catch on the sideline.
The toss.
And you got to all the time, so you can keep running the ball. With Anthony Thomas.
To the 10-yard line, clock continues to run. He was down at the 11.
Yeah, clock is not an issue for Michigan.
No, absolutely not. Actually, they probably want to run time.
And Brady gets terrific.
There it is. Signature pass of his college career. Marcus Knight in the corner of the end zone to take the lead.
Version of the smash concept where you get like a hitch or an in route by the number one receiver and then the slot runs a corner versus man-to-man. That's pretty hard to cover.
It's Penn State still has quite a bit of time here. It's down 4. They got to score a touchdown.
Thompson. They come underneath, short of the first down, but the clock is stopped as Corey Jones is out of bounds. First down marker is close to midfield. Thompson got time, got his man wide open, Drummond.
And the difference in football in 1999 to now, it's the last-minute drive, and they've been under center this entire time.
Thompson in
trouble. There we go. Drop back pass. He gets stripped. Michigan recovers.
Michigan wins it.
They need one more first down just to seal it. They do here with Anthony Thomas.
Wolverines, 11 more yards for Anthony Thomas.
He not only had to fight to stay at Michigan, he had to fight off a phenom who has a baseball bonus contract, and a lot of people expected to beat out.
Michigan's going to get the win. We're going to hear from Lloyd Carr here from Michigan Replay. Just a little quick clip here.
31-27 the final. One thing you wanted to talk about was, Tom Brady in that game on Saturday. Just, he did the statistics, the 3 interceptions, all those things, but boy, his resolve's pretty special.
Well, I think that's true of this team, but certainly what Tom Brady did, he was 8 out of 17 on third down, Jim, against, I don't think there's any question, one of the best defenses we've seen in a while. And just got hit a number of times, but just kept battling. And that's what you have to do in a game like that.
Well, they battled and got the victory. Congratulations. That's a big one.
It was a big one.
It was a big one indeed. 31-27 the final.
So there it is, Brian. You hear Lloyd Carr talking about it and talking about Tom Brady. And, just the poise, after throwing that pick six, you go down 10, under 10 minutes to go, you think it might be over. And then he rallies the team, two scoring drives, 2 touchdown drives to win the game.
Yeah. And, I think if Tom Brady wouldn't have done anything in the NFL, like I still think the way he handles himself during that time, right, and the way he bounced back and kept fighting adversity, I think he'd have been a Michigan legend anyway, to a degree. You know what I'm saying? I do. Because I've heard Lloyd Carr talk about Tom Brady even before he became Tom Brady, and just the way he handled everything with grace. And, he mentioned it in the cold open, like, he's like, do I want to transfer? If this was 2026, like he's gone.
Good.
Like, don't kid yourself. Like, he's getting paid somewhere else for one, right? And he's gone, and he's not dealing with that. Probably a lot of those quarterbacks. Michigan in their own right probably been like, all right, well, we're just gonna go with Drew Henson. Of course they would.
And they're probably paying an ungodly amount for Drew Henson to make sure he doesn't go to baseball and all that.
Yeah, and that's not to knock anybody today transferring, nothing like that. I'm not,
it's just a different world.
It's just different. It's just different, right? And so he was like, there's probably countless examples of guys who waited out their turn and it didn't work out. But in this case, like for Tom Brady, like it did work out. Like he still got a degree from a great university, met some great people, all that stuff that goes into it. But yeah, I think he would have been a legend in his own right. But still, this was a cool moment and a precursor. Then again the following week when they played Ohio State, and then in the Orange Bowl against Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michigan, they were hot at this point. They got the win over Ohio State, and then the bowl game win over Alabama. And we mentioned it was a different world. And this is what part of the series that we're kind of getting into is we wanted to add this segment to the end of these shows for this series. And it's kind of like a what if series. Well, what if there was a playoff system, a 12-team playoff system back in 1999, and what kind of what it would look like. And it is a different world because there was 6 power conferences back then as opposed to 4. And I'm going to pull this up real quick. This was the final AP poll after the conference championship games. And there was only a couple conference championship games back then. But there was, as I mentioned, there's 6 power conferences. So you got Virginia Tech from the Big East, which no longer exists. You got Nebraska, who won the Big 12. Nebraska's not in the Big 12 anymore. So you just look at it, man, it's just so different than what it used to be. But I wanted to look at it like, what if we had a 12-team playoff, right? And the kind of criteria that I looked at, because you're not going to have automatic bids from a group of 5 because there's 6 power conferences. But I actually looked back at it. I'm like, even if you did, you would have had Marshall in it regardless, regardless of how you do, or you just have the top 12 ranked, or you have automatic bids baked in. Florida would have made it, or Marshall would have made it either way because they were 12-0 in the MAC. Do you remember that Marshall team? Because obviously it wasn't Randy Moss on that team, but was Chad Pennington still?
Yeah, no, Chad Pennington was probably the quarterback potentially. I don't remember that team as much, but they had a little run with the Randy Moss, Chad Pennington, and era where they were like pretty good consistently.
They still had, they obviously still had a couple good years after Randy Moss had left. But you look at it here, if we were just to do it as a 1 through 12, your top 4 conference winners would have gotten the byes, which would have been Florida State, Virginia Tech, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. So then you break it down. Your first round matchups, 5 versus 12, would have been Alabama hosting Minnesota, which would have been an interesting game considering what Minnesota was able to do that season, upsets, against Penn State. Your 6-11 matchup would have been Tennessee hosting the undefeated Marshall. And Brian, we've had talks about this more on the inside of the coach's office, but I had mentioned like, hey, the reason you have an automatic bid for these group of 5s is for a team like this year in 99, where you have a Marshall team that goes undefeated. And you give them an opportunity like, hey, you had an undefeated season. You deserve the opportunity to at least have a chance in a 12-team format to play for a championship. Now, this year we had 2. Neither one of them were undefeated in James Madison and Tulane, which was what was so frustrating. But I think in this situation, it would have been interesting to see what an undefeated Marshall team could have done going to Tennessee. And I think that would have been an interesting matchup. Your 7-10 matchup would have been Kansas State hosting Florida. Another kind of interesting matchup, a matchup beyond I don't remember ever really seeing. So it would have been an interesting matchup to see. But the whole reason we did this, and I think the most fascinating aspect, because when you brought this idea to me, hey, let's do like a what if series, what if it was a 12-team playoff? And the first thing that jumped into mind was the 99 Michigan Penn State game. And like, wow, man, I wonder what Michigan could have done in the playoffs with a Tom Brady fully entrenched as the starter. And then when I actually broke it down, the first round matchup would have been Michigan, the 8 seed, hosting the 9 seed Michigan State in a rematch in Ann Arbor. Incredible.
So the storylines there would be off the charts, because think of what you have. Like Tom Brady's entrenched as the starter. Okay. So he's the guy. The rematch, and I think this is where if you're Michigan, you're like, heck yeah, we want a rematch. But if you're Michigan State, you're like, no way, I want a rematch. Like, we already beat these guys, theoretically, right? And also keep in mind, this was during the time when Nick Saban was talking to LSU and leaving to LSU before the bowl game. So you might have a Lane Kiffin situation, going on when you're about to play a playoff game against your main rival.
Crazy, right? You would have had a Lane Kiffin situation, but while playing your arch rival.
Yes,
in the first round.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. It'd have been off the charts. It'd have been off the charts.
There would have been arguments. Why is it at the Big House and not at East Lansing?
Well,
they had. So you wonder maybe they would have done some things where they would have flip-flopped them in the rankings. Who knows?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, but even then though, I remember like the argument, and this goes on to this day, like the argument is like, well, Michigan was still the better team, even, because they lost on the road. And as the year went on, Michigan was better at the end of the year than Michigan State was. So even though they lost to them head to head, which I go back to regardless of the teams playing, like head to head has to matter.
When they're 8-9 like that, or even like, okay, like you take all this stuff away, and Michigan got the Orange Bowl bid over Michigan State.
I remember.
Michigan State was technically ahead of them in the Big Ten Conference. I remember. They had the same record. They won head to head.
It was because remember that was then like the bowl had the choice of who they wanted to play, have that bowl game, right? And trust me, Michigan State.
I mean, I'm looking back on it, Michigan State. They followed up that Michigan win with getting blown out twice.
They did.
I mean, blown out. I mean, I'm not talking like 10, 14 points. I mean, this is where like 28-point blowouts.
Purdue and Wisconsin, if I remember. Like it was not good for them. I mean, which goes to the argument when Michigan fans talk about, hey, the little brother, like all you do is care about Michigan, so on and so forth. It's like, okay, like, and you wonder why Michigan State has a chip on their shoulder, right? Things like that happen. But no doubt. This is a weird, it would have been, the storylines would have been off the charts.
It would have been incredible. It would have been absolutely incredible. And I wish we could have it, man. I wish we could have had it. Just to, it would have been fascinating. The build up to it, because you would have had a few weeks to build up to it. The radio locally would have been off the charts incredible. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But just in general, you just look at it like, do you think Michigan could have made a run? With Tom Brady and Trent as the starter, or do you think they didn't have enough?
I mean, I guess you could say that, but like Florida State was really good that year, and they were really dominant. Peter Warwick, I think, was the number 1 pick of the Bengals, or they're all everything receiver and punt returner. I mean, do I think Virginia Tech? I mean, it was what it was. Like they had some decent players, but obviously Michael Vick was a headliner. Like, do I think Virginia Tech, if they have to go through? If they have to play Michigan or if they have to play Nebraska, on a neutral field, is Virginia Tech definitely better than those two teams? I don't think so, right? But Florida State that year was I want to say maybe one of Bobby Bowden's last national championships. I think. Don't quote me on it, but they were really good.
I'm pretty sure that was his last one.
Chris Weinke was their starting quarterback. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they were good. They were good. So I mean. I guess what's your definition of a run? Could they have won a few games? Sure. Yes, I think they could have.
I guess like similar to like what Miami did, where they got to the title game, didn't win it, but
there's a lot about matchups too. You know what I mean? At that point of the season as well. So I think they could have. I do. I disagree with you about the Marshall Group of 5 aspect, and we've talked about that before. Like to me, Mac's a little bit. Like the MAC schools are all better than like James Madison and Tulane. Like that doesn't bother me as much as a MAC school because they at least attempt to play a lot of Big Ten teams. They have Big Ten teams on their schedule, so it's not just that schedule. But yes, it would have been fun.
Well, I don't know if we could go back and forth on that. I just, to me, they're already ranked.
Well, this one,
they're undefeated. I don't know.
Yes, this was a little bit different.
But this is kind of the whole point of it. Like when you get these rare occasions where a team like a Marshall goes undefeated, they had a little bit of a run and some success with some big time players with Randy Moss and Pennington. These are those rare exceptions where a team like that, I believe, should get the opportunity, not what we had.
I guess I don't.
Most recent season.
I guess like to my point, I don't like it when it's just like a guaranteed.
Like, it shouldn't be baked in. It shouldn't be automatic. Yes, I agree with you there.
It happens.
I've gotten off of that hill. We'll say I'm not dying on that hill to fight for the Group of 5 to get an automatic bid. But
good.
But fascinating to look at this. And Brian, that's why we did it. Why you brought up the why we should consider it, and then to break it down, like doing the research and to see that where it was 8-9 Michigan, I was like, oh my god, you got to be kidding me! How perfect.
So maybe Dan, maybe we'll do for our listeners the next time is we, you're better at the graphics than me. Actually, create the bracket.
I was thinking about doing that, but I kind of just I figured we could just kind of talk through it. But the next time I will, as we continue to do this, I'll make the little graphics. So then maybe we can kind of pick them, as we go and
awesome.
Talk about who would be in the national championship, who would win the national championship in a hypothetical 12-team playoff. So pretty fascinating stuff, Brian. Pretty cool to go back and look at this 99 game, this Tom Brady game. Before we log off here, what are your final thoughts on this one?
No, like you said, it was a fun one. It was one of the better ones of the Tom Brady era at Michigan, obviously, and it was a good one to finish up on. Yep, for sure.
Absolutely. So We're gonna just kind of like starting a new season for the college football retro show for us. We took a couple months off after that marathon we did of our Michigan Ohio State, and then we kind of focused on our other podcast, Inside Coach's Office, and we've had a ton of good guests and had a lot of good shows there. You know, kind of looking at college football playoffs and the current system. But man, it is so much fun to always go back and look back at these old games and the memories and everything and the nostalgia that comes from it. And then to kind of bring out this new segment, I really like this, Brian, to, you know, kind of a what if segment and looking back, what if we had the current playoff system and what it would look like back then. So a lot of fun. We hope you guys enjoyed it. For Coach Barnes, I'm Dan Murphy, and we'll see you again down the road.